And they had the same thing at Cambridge and Oxford.
I want to go back to your husband, John. Tell me more about him. You said he was the nicest person you ever knew. That's one of the reasons you married him. But what was it about him that Lily or others in the family would like to know?
What was it about him that what?
That Lily would like to know. She never met him.
Had a fantastic sense of humor. He was a lovely storyteller. We would have dinner parties, and then at the end of the dinner party, he could tell a story and it would hold everybody. And as I say, a good sense of humor. I mean, this is just an illustration of his sense of humor. So we had a toilet seat that broke. It broke just in half. And so he took half of the toilet seat to work with him, put it in one of the inter-office envelopes because it fit, you know, how they have these big envelopes for inter-office memos. So he put it in there and addressed it to this person he knew at work who was half-assed.
I like that. That's very
I think that was a good one. I mean, that illustrates his kind of humor.
So what was he like physically? Was he a big man?
He was 6'4".
Oh, a big man.
I was just talking about him the other day because we were talking about shoes. When I met John, he was 6'4" and he took a size 14, and he couldn't get his shoes in the regular stores. He had to send away to a special store in Boston, I think, in New England. I'm pretty sure it was Boston. And the same with shirts. He couldn't get, shirt sleeves long enough and that kind of thing. And when he was in England, he got hooked up with a Hong Kong tailor. The Hong Kong tailors would come and to the bases and sell their wares. And so John always got his clothes from the Hong Kong tailor after I knew him. He didn't, his suits and he didn't. Yeah, well, he only had one suit, I think. His sports jackets and his flannel trousers. And then the other thing is when John went into the army during the war, they didn't have any boots big enough for him. So he did, I don't know, but at some point in his, the preliminary part of his experience in the army, he was stationed at Fort MacArthur, I think it's in Long Beach. Anyway, Fort McSomething in Long Beach, while they waited for him to get a pair of boots because they had to be made specially for him. So he probably only had one pair of boots the whole time he was in the army. Let's see what else. That was kind of, I guess I don't know what he did for socks. He must have had his toes pinched or something. Or maybe he got the socks from the same place he got the shoes from. But it was difficult being a big person.
Yeah. Especially in those days. What did he do at McDonnell Douglas after the war?
What?
What was his job there?
Okay, well, as far as I can determine, I think he finished UCLA before he went into the military. So if he was born in 17, he was 20 in 37. So he finished his military before the war. When he came back, he had a job with the veterans outfit at UCLA, working with the veterans. And then I guess that must have folded because then he was selling insurance. And then he got a job with Douglas. And he became a scheduler, and he was with Douglas for the rest of his career. So he was with them for 30 years.
So dealing with aircraft?
What?
Dealing with aircraft?
Douglas was only aircraft at that time. It was the creation of Donald Douglas. I forget when McDonnell took over Douglas, but that happened. Then, of course, Boeing took over both of them. But he was with them. And he was with them in Santa Monica, and he was with them in Huntington Beach. And he always worked on these missiles. And he was a scheduler, and what the scheduler job was having these big sheets of paper, like, 5 feet across or something, and entering the information on all where the vendors were going to bring their stuff all to create these missiles. Whenever the screw was going to go in, and there were all these do you know anything about scheduling?
No, I don't.
Yeah, well, you just have to have everything down on paper, absolutely accurate to the last second. And that's his job, was to, collect the information and get it down on paper. So he did that all by hand. And he had a team of people, of course, helping him. But I remember when in the 1990s, I was at a party and I met a man who was a scheduler. And he said, I don't know how they did that without computers.
Well, they built the atomic bomb without computers.
Exactly. There's a lot you can do without a computer.
Yeah. All right, let's go back to your investigative career. You must have encountered some relatively dangerous situations when you're out there interviewing people.
Personally, I never had a dangerous situation.
Oh, good.
One of my fellow investigators did. She was, and so it could happen. I'll just tell you that she was investigating something which involved some possible illegal people. Anyway, she had to go out to an RV type vehicle in a field, and someone pulled a knife on her. That was it. So she made a quick retreat. The only time I did make a quick retreat was kind of fun. John was pretty sick. This would be after he diagnosed with his cancer, and he was pretty sick. But anyway, I had to go and talk to some Vietnamese people in Pacoima. So here we are in Huntington Beach, Orange County, and I have to go up to Pacoima, which is up in the San Fernando Valley, and there's a low rent district for that part of Los Angeles area. So anyway, I said, well, John, I've got to go up in the evening. Come with me. So John and I drive up to Pacoima, and we get to this place, and I'm just checking the street numbers. And so I said, let's park here, and I'll walk to the house because it can't be far because of the street numbers. Well, as it happened, I had to walk a fair distance, and John was parked over there, and I had to walk a fair distance because actually it was federal housing for the poor. Or how do you describe it? They weren't homeless at that time, but they didn't have much money for the low income people. Right. And so anyway, I walked a fair distance, and I finally got to the house where I wanted to be and tried to, and they let me in. But then after a while, the atmosphere turned kind of sticky, and I served a subpoena, which is what I was there to do. And the young man at the house, like 20 years old, said, you don't have the right to be in here. I'm going to call the police on you. You're trespassing. Blah, blah, blah. So I beat a hasty retreat. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing about that particular event was not that part was, I understood. That's okay. But what happened is I walked from the car to the house was that I could hear a whistle going ahead of me as I walked along. And that was the gang members warning each other that there was a stranger. Wow. Have you had anything like that?
No. A menacing stranger.
Anyway, so that was the interesting thing there.
So we can move on to your travels.
I was just trying to think if there was any other sort of tricky situation.
Well, you were involved in trying to get people off, right? You're a public defender.
Yes. We're trying to get them, if they're going to, we try to get them charged with what they were actually guilty of. It's not a matter of getting them off. It's making sure that they don't go away for a long time for something they didn't do.
Right.
If someone is actually may have killed someone and be charged with first-degree murder, then we find out it's not first degree because there was no intent, so then it becomes second degree. But then if someone is charged with second degree, it might really only be like a first-degree manslaughter, or first-degree manslaughter might really only be a second-degree manslaughter. And so it's up to the attorney, and with the help of his investigator and everybody else, to try and get the person to be charged with what he actually did, not with what the DA wants to make him guilty of.
And occasionally they might have been innocent. And occasionally they might have been innocent.
Well, I've only had one case where I thought that the person was innocent, and we did get a not guilty verdict. And that was the case I worked really, really hard on. And one of the things I had to do on that particular case was go to the back room of a video store where they had paper receipts in boxes. This was a video store owned by a Korean. And these boxes were sort of, he knew which one was which, so he could tell. But anyway, I had to look for a certain number on a video paper receipt. And that was the number of the membership of our client or his friend. And I looked and I couldn't find it. And then I found out, no, that wasn't the right number. And I had to go back and go through all these boxes again, looking for the second number. And I found it. And that was one of the pieces of evidence that got him off.
It just takes dogged determination.
Well, it did. But the other thing is, of course, was the attorney got an expert witness from Claremont who was very good on memory and how the memory tricks oneself. So he helped. And then there was a lot of factors going into that innocent verdict, but they were all built up to make it happen.
This is why it's good there are public defenders, because that person wouldn't have been able to afford a lawyer.
No, he was a little Mexican gardener.
Right. So that must have been very satisfying.
Oh, it was. I'll never forget that. It was wonderful. I don't think I've ever written it up. I should.
Well, you've got to start here.
And I'm still friends with that particular attorney.
Good. So you were investigator for how many years?
Around 20.
It's a long time.
When I realized that I had reached the end when I retired. I wasn't doing a good job anymore. So I knew it was, and I had enough pension. At least I thought I had enough pension to retire. I did, but I knew I wasn't doing a good job anymore, and that was not very nice.
So you retired, and then you moved to Paradise.
Yeah, I did more or less right away.
Then you met Persis at Bridge, and she overheard you talking about your trip to Egypt.
No, it wasn't to Egypt. It was to Japan.
Japan, that's Japan. My mistake.
I did go to Egypt with Persis. But I think that first trip with Persis must have been the one when we went to Thailand.
Right.
But I enjoyed Thailand, but that was one of the places where I saw how dreadful existence is for some people. And I really didn't care to see it. I didn't care to sort of be gawking at people who don't have any money.
Right.
Anything. Maybe they don't even have enough rice for dinner tonight.
So how about when you went to the Middle East? I remember you went to Jordan, right?
Okay, shall I tell you all the places I've been to in the Middle East?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, there's Turkey. I lived in Turkey for 18 months. And then that was before I married. And then after I married, I didn't do any traveling, but then I did go to the Middle East. I went to Cyprus with my cousins because they lived there and they wanted to go for a home thing. I went to Israel to visit my friend, one of the attorneys from the office. I went to Egypt with Persis. And then I went on a tour with Persis to Oman and the Emirates. And then we went to Bahrain and visited our friends in Bahrain. And that might be it. Oh, and then when I was in Israel, I went to Jordan. Right. So we went to see Petra. Right. That's interesting. But one of the things that absolutely blew me away, and I can still see it, was the refugee camp for the Palestinians from the 48 war.
Mhm.
And I was there in the 1990s, and that camp is still there, and it's still there today.
And it's huge.
Very high chain link, barbed wire fences, and what are these people? What's happening to these people? They're just living there on money from the United Nations, I guess. It's horrible. It's probably this. When I look at pictures of Gaza, it's terrible.
We're much better off here.
We're very fortunate.
So on all your travels, did you eat the local food or did you stick to American hotels?
Oh, always. Well, when I was traveling with Persis, we always traveled in very nice hotels. There was never any roughing it with Persis.
Mm-hmm.
But when I traveled with Tracy didn't have much money, so we didn't travel first class. We didn't travel second class. We traveled third class, basically. We stayed in some pretty rough hotels. We had a good time. When I traveled with Tracy, it was basically in France and Spain and England. Yeah.
I know you developed a taste for Japanese food, so you must have eaten in Japanese restaurants when you're on your own.
In Japan?
Right. I mean, you split off from the.
I just ate wherever I could, but one of the things about Japan is they make a very good curry. And sometimes I remember eating curry. My taste for Japanese food was only because I lived with Sherry and Teal. Well, not lived with Teal, but we used to eat it. They both loved sushi and stuff. I don't like raw fish. I like some of the other stuff. And I'm not crazy. Actually, I can't say that I'm crazy about Japanese food.
Okay.
I find something to eat, but not raw fish. And that's the whole point of Japanese restaurants.
Many of them.
But I liked Middle Eastern stuff. Of course, my favorite country is France. I've been there at least 10 times. I like Spain too. I like France, Spain, and Italy. I'm very conservative, I guess.
Well, that's the kind of food I like. I would like France, Spain, and Italy for a gourmet tour also.
Yeah, even and I went to Spain with Tracy, but I've been to Italy and France with Pete, as well as going to both countries with Tracy. Oh, I traveled some with my sister June. Yeah, well, what happened there was this. We were staying over at Christmas at somebody's house in Cape Town. Louise lived in Johannesburg, so someone said we could go and stay in their house over Christmas because they were going away and they would be happy to have us there, so it was occupied and they wouldn't get squatters. So we stayed there, and from where we were living, we could see not Table Mountain, we could see Lion Mountain. And it was a mountain that sort of looked like a lion lying down. And so Louise said, what we'll do is we'll climb up the mountain and have a picnic and some champagne at the top of the mountain, and then we'll come down. So when we get to the top, there's masses of people up there having champagne and a snack, and then they start leaving. And Louise says, oh, we don't have to leave. Yeah, being Louise, and we don't have to leave yet. And so by the time we left, we might have been the last people off the top of the mountain. And there we are going down. There's a path, but the thing is, Madeleine slips off the path and slips down the mountain. Fortunately, I get caught on a tree. And panic, and it's dark. It's already not right dark, nearly dark. And I'm hanging onto this tree. And two men come and rescue me. And James, and the thing is, as Louise tells me after, she said, being homosexual is illegal in this country, and they go to that mountain. They go to that mountain for their meetings, and so we were lucky that there were a couple of homosexuals meeting not far from where I fell. I was rescued off Lion Mountain by a couple of gay guys.
Yes, that was the story I remembered. So it wasn't you.
That was with Louise, yes.
Louise.
Yes. She called me the other day. We had a chat. She's just the same. Yeah, that's another one I haven't read. I've had some wonderful times with Lisa.
So where do they live?
They live in Bergen, which is up the coast from. Well, it's a sort of Oslo's on the west and Bergen's on Oslo's on the east and Bergen's on the west, and Bergen is a coastal town. It's got some old buildings. It was I think it was a Hanseatic port for a while, and not a big one, sort of a local one, but they still have the old sort of warehouses where the fish were the cod were put to dry. That was the big thing. They would dry cod and then they would sell it to places like Spain. And then when you're in Spain, you have to eat this fish salt cod, which they soak for 24 hours or 48 hours to get rid of the salt. And it never really goes. But I have to tell you, when I was in Spain with Persis and the rest of the gang, I was the only person who ate the salt cod. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Here you are in a country and there's a national dish and you don't even look at it. And it's just fish. If it was a snake or something. After John and I moved to the San Fernando Valley, I was working in the Bank of America in Van Nuys, and one of my customers invited me to go to Billy Graham.
Oh, that's an experience.
The early Billy Graham holy roller things. And people were going up to be blessed or whatever it was. Right. But I didn't.
He used to fill Yankee Stadium.
Yeah. It was. I don't remember where this was held. I just it wasn't either the Coliseum or the Rose Bowl. But
could have been the Hollywood Bowl.
Maybe it was the Hollywood Bowl. No.
Well, he would have gone bigger than that.
In fact, we were in bleachers on a fairly flat area. Maybe it was just a football field. I don't know.
Well, anyway, I did not get converted.
Now I went to this event with Billy Graham. On the way back, they said, "Should we go and get some pie?" And I didn't know what they were talking about. And I'd already been living in this country 5 or 6 years. And we went to a coffee shop, which was part of a chain in the Los Angeles area where they sold excellent pies. And you could go in and have a piece of pie and a cup of coffee. That was the first time I did that. That was probably after I'd been here. Yeah, probably 4 or 5 years.
Well, Marie Callender's once had a reputation like that.
Yes. Well, this was before Marie Callender.
And I'm sure you never went to Bob's Big Boy Hamburgers.
Of course I did.
Did you?
Before I stopped eating hamburgers. I used to think Marie Callender made a good hamburger because it was smothered in Thousand Island dressing.
Well, Bob's Big Boy had the statue of the gigantic Bob's Big Boy with the gigantic butt.
I know. I remember. We had one in Huntington Beach.
You too can get as fat as Bob.
It was ridiculous. There are people here who eat hot dogs and hamburgers virtually all the time. And I'm horrified. But they seem to think they're born.
So when you were growing up with a family dinner, did you all ate together when you were home together?
We did what? We ate together. Oh, yes. It was the dining room and the kitchen. And the kitchen was a large farm kitchen, so there was a big table there. And we would have breakfast there for sure. And quite often we'd have lunch. But very often, and of course at the weekends, we would eat in the dining room at the big table with the mahogany chairs and that kind of thing. So, but we always ate as a family. Nobody ate as snacks. We didn't have snacks in between meals. There wasn't ever any sort of food lying around.
Well, there should have been fruit lying around. Wasn't there fruit lying around?
Oh, well, that doesn't count. An apple?
Oh, yeah.
You got that off a tree.
Yeah, that's not a snack.
No, it's not a snack. There weren't cheeses and crackers and so on. But no, we always ate as a family. There was no concept of it doing it any other way.
Well, you said your mother wasn't a very good cook.
No, she wasn't.
So what kind of food, what did she make that you liked?
Well, I liked everything she made because I'm always hungry.
Mhm.
So I liked what she made. It was just that there was no imagination to it.
The childhood traditions we had in this country of when you lost a tooth, the tooth fairy would leave you a coin. Anything like that in your past?
Well, I understand that tradition. I don't remember anybody giving me sixpence, but that was the tradition. You'd get a silver sixpence for your birth, for the tooth. But I don't remember it happening to me. So whether it did or not, I don't know. I know that's the tradition in England, but I don't know about it.
Was there a local dentist?
Yes, I went to the local dentist. Yes. And I didn't go to the local dentist for years. And then one time when I was in London, I went to a dentist and he said, that tooth, you've got to have that tooth out. It's dead. He pulled out one of my front teeth. So there I was with a big gap in my teeth. Now, I don't think I had that gap filled. I don't think I had that gap filled until I came to the United States.
Were there any houses in the neighborhood that you stayed away from, either bad people or anybody have ghost experiences?
Ghost?
Yeah, there are people around who might have said that house is haunted.
Well, yes, we did have a haunted house, but it was a long way from where we lived. But it was a big manor house. It's called Wamil Hall, Wamil Hall. And there was supposed to be a lady ghost. And when, we used to go for walks at night as well as, late evening as well as during the day. And I do remember one time we went by that place at night. And we sort of went by very quickly because of the ghost. But we never actually saw her.
And what was the weather like in the winter in Mildenhall? Was there any snow?
I only remember snow one time. I remember snow one time, and I remember ice in the fields one time because we went ice skating. And I remember we made a snowman on the lawn when it snowed. But those are just rare instances. I don't remember snow every winter or anything like that. A lot of rain.
Any flooding?
Visiting, and the rain flooding is just horrible. But we had some flooding, I remember, when I was a girl, but I don't remember a lot of flooding.
So what's the nearby river?
Lark, L-A-R-K.
Mm-hmm.
We ran into the Ouse, which is a big...
I've heard of the Ouse.
But the Lark used to be a barge river before my time, before trains. And they used to take barges up from the coast to Bury St. Edmunds, which is a long way. And I didn't realize the reason that there was a path alongside the river was because that's where the horses went, of course. Mm-hmm. They'd coal and grain, anything. Those barges went up and down the river. And then the trains came along, and that was the end of the barge traffic.
Were there any mines nearby?
No. Suffolk is agricultural.
Okay.
Suffolk and Norfolk and Essex, less so, were completely bypassed by the Industrial Revolution, which is why they are still beautiful today. Well, as much as they can be beautiful. Right. Well, they're still agricultural.
So how far away is Mildenhall from the Lake Country?
From the West Country?
The Lake Country.
Oh, the Lake Country. It's a long way. 150, 200 miles.
Okay, all right. That would be a vacation destination for me.
You have to be ready to hike if you want to appreciate that.
I'd have to train.
You'd have to train to go up and down and up and down and down, yes. And from what I read, it's so horribly crowded. But it would be wonderful. John and I drove around there a bit, and what we saw was nice. But of course, we didn't get out and hike because he had cancer by that time.
I remember the Wainwright documentary. See, he had cataloged all of those trails.
Yes, yeah, it's beautiful. All that I left behind. Pete and I drove through Yosemite. I went to Yosemite with John. When did I go with John? But I did go to Yosemite with John. Anyway, I've been there two or three times and just going through. It is beautiful.
No rock climbing.
Oh, one time I purchased, got a rental at, that town outside Yosemite. Anyway, there's a town outside Yosemite or small village, where we rented a cabin, and it was a very nice cabin. And one of the nice things about the cabin was that all the pots and pans matched. And you don't usually get that in a summer rental or a winter rental or whatever. And so we stayed there, and then we drove down into the Yosemite a couple of times and went to the Awani and had lunch and that kind of thing.
I went there with my high school friend Jim.
Another time, John and I stayed at this town outside Yosemite, and I was going to a conference down in the valley not at the Awani, but at the other big hotel. And so every day, John and I would drive from this place, whatever it's called, down into Yosemite Valley, and there would be a fresh snowfall on the trees. And it was the most beautiful experience driving through this fresh snow on the trees every day. I arrived here in the summer of 1960, and John was living at the William Tell Motel in Santa Monica at that time. And Tom was living there as well. Anyway, so we got an apartment near University High School. And my bedroom windows overlooked the playgrounds at the high school. We lived there, and I had Teresa, and we lived there for a while. And then John's ex-wife offered us her house in Malibu if we would have the boys, all three boys, living with us. So when we were living in the apartment in West Los Angeles, where next to the University High School, Tom and Troy were living with us, and Tim was living with his mother in Malibu. So anyway, all three of the boys came to live with us in Malibu. And the house was on Old Malibu Road on the land side, but we were able to go down to the beach, and we had access to the beach. So it was very nice. And we lived there for a year, and then John's ex, Helen, or Elaine as she liked to be called, decided that she wanted to have the house back because she wanted to move in with her boyfriend. And she may have been pregnant at that time too, because she had a baby. Anyway, so we had to move, and we moved back to West Los Angeles, and we had an apartment on 13th, or also known as Euclid Street in West Los Angeles. And I was working at Bank of America at that time. And so the women I worked with, was kept sort of saying, you really should get a house. It's ridiculous to keep on paying rent. And so I said to John, we've got to get a house. And so the only place where we could afford a house was over in the San Fernando Valley. So we started looking in the San Fernando Valley, and we found a house in Northridge. And so John and Troy and Tom and I moved to Northridge, and Tim stayed with his mother because he was still going to school out there. And Tim would come over to our place every weekend, and Tom finished high school in Santa Monica, and then he went to Santa Monica 2-year college, and Troy went to Santa Monica High School because getting him into the Northridge High School was tricky because of the transportation and so on. I'm not quite sure about all my facts on that. But it may be that, he was in junior high at that time, and he went to junior high in Santa Monica, and then he did go to high school in Northridge. And he finished there, and then he went to UCLA. And at some point, I had Teresa, and in Pacific State, Tracy went to Pacific State in 64. Tracy was born in 64. And anyway, and I was working and John was working, and then they made John work in Huntington Beach, and he was driving to Huntington Beach every day before the freeway. And he had a friend in Northridge who drove with him. And so we lived in that house until 1967. And I said, it's ridiculous. We've got to move to Huntington Beach. We sold the house in Northridge, and Tracy and I went to England for our first visit after leaving England. And John got an apartment in Huntington Beach, got everything moved down there and took care of business. We lived in the apartment for a while, and then we bought the house in Huntington Beach. And in the meantime, I stopped working at Bank of America, and I took a course of shorthand and typing and how to be a secretary, and I got a job at the public defender's office. So Tracy went to preschool, and then she went to kindergarten, and then she went to an extended day school. And John, luckily for us, because I'd spent all the money that we made on the house in Northridge on an MGB, so we didn't have any money for a down payment. But luckily, John was transferred to work up in Santa Monica on the Saturn rocket, and they paid him per diem. And that gave him a lot of money, so we were able to make a down payment on a house in Huntington Beach. And we lived in Huntington Beach, and John died in 1990, and I lived in the house until 93, at which time I sold it for a nice profit. And then I came up to Paradise. That's the story. I worked at Bank of America, and I worked at Public Defender, and John worked at McDonnell Douglas forever. Yeah, that's it.
One more thing. What about your sister, Susan?
My sister?
Susan.
Susan? Susan was born when I was 5 years old. And I suspect I was very jealous. I don't know, because mother really paid a lot of attention to Susan. So Susan was there, but then there was always this, I was always wrapped up in my own business and whatever June told me to do. So I barely knew Susan. And so what happened was, when I went to the school where I caught the train, I left the house so early that she was not up, and I got home so late that it was time for her to go to bed. So I didn't get to know her. And then I was away, and then I came home one weekend. Mrs. Wilson said that your mother wants you to go and stay with so-and-so over the weekend. So I went and stayed with one of the other girls over the weekend. And when I went back home the following weekend, Susan had passed away and had already been buried. And I didn't know anything about it.
So what disease did she get?
Leukemia.
And there wasn't a cure then.
They took her up to London for the specialist, but there was nothing that could be done at that time. And I was 12 years old by then.
Yeah.
She was 7. Now, Cherry knew her pretty well because Mother let her do a lot of the caregiving. But when Susan was at home and in bed, I wasn't even allowed into the bedroom where she was. It was a very different culture, I suppose.
Well, it certainly wasn't contagious.
I don't think that was the concern. I think the concern was whether I should be exposed to someone who was dying.
Right. Well, that's sad.
Well, the whole situation is sad. I mean, I never went to my grandparents' funerals. I just came home and found everybody sitting around in black. Oh, yeah, Grandpa died. We went. The first funeral I went to was my friend's father, and by that time I was 20. It was the first time I went to a funeral. And that was, I don't know.
The last funeral I went to and the last one I planned to go to, I was astonished. Everybody was wearing clothes like they're going to a picnic. Nobody was wearing black.
Well, this was that time I saw the people wearing black. That was like, if I was 12, that was 45. So people would still wear black then. But when I went to my friend's father's funeral, I don't remember that we were wearing black. I remember going to a wedding by mistake in Orvieto in Italy. Everybody was wearing black. I couldn't believe it.
What else I wanted to talk about? I think that's the only questions I've got.
Okay, all right. So did you say this was the last one?
It's up to you. It could be. If you remember things you want to talk about, we can do this again. I'm going to be inside anyway. It's going to be 116 next weekend.
Well, why don't we have a little chat, if nothing else?
Sure, I like that. Always good to see you.
Yeah, 2 o'clock on Saturday.
We don't argue like you. We
What?
don't argue. We don't argue like you and Judy do.
Judy and I don't argue.
Yes, you do.
We had a wonderful conversation the other day. I don't think we argued about anything.
You always complain about each other.
Well, she calls me madwoman, and you don't approve.
No, I don't.
It's a term of affection.
Yes, I understand. I understand. She's always complaining about how difficult you are to deal with when you're on a trip. You always want things your own way.
Who?
You. Judy complains.
Of course I do. What's the point of wanting things if it's not your own way? I don't.
That's why I wanted to know what you were like when you were growing up. I wanted to see where the seed was planted. If they have this very confident person who more often than not actually is right, but always thinks she's right.
You know, I don't know how it happened because I was a very shrinking violet when I was younger. I don't know when I got this self-confidence. I do think counseling probably helped, but I didn't have counseling until probably the 1970s. But I think that helped. But the other thing that helped was John. John was the most positive force in my life. With that, John actually probably made me the way I am. It was because of John.
Well, good for him. I'm glad he did.
Yeah, I am too.
So that must have been a real blow when he got sick.
It wasn't nice. No. I mean, I must have had some. I had some self-confidence because I went to university and I went off to Turkey all by myself, and I traveled by myself later on. But John rounded me out and made me confidence of myself, my expressing myself because he let me. Whereas other people would always shut me up.